Big time fight coming up at welterweight this week. We have Sasha Palatnikov taking on Ramiz Brahimaj, and I can't wait for it because it's a bit of a clash of styles. Sasha Palatnikov, you've heard me talk about it. Was he a football player at Montreal's Concordia University at one point? Yeah. Does he represent Hong Kong? Sure. Does he train out of Syndicate? You're darn tootin' he does. Did he lose his last fight and coast a little bit in the first round and try and save his gas tank for the second and third round? Yes, he did, and that cost him against Impa Kasanganay, who was moving down from 170 pounds, and implemented a wrestling-heavy style.
I feel like Impa moved down from like 210 pounds.
He looked great in that fight. But, Matt, in this fight, it's a great one. For Ramiz Brahimaj, he had the toughest fight of his life the last time out against Max Griffin, but this is, after all, his second chance in the UFC. We're going to throw it back. We've got the 15-minute card breaks, rookie review. So let's have a look back in the time machine at Ramiz Brahimaj and what he brought to the cage. And then we're going to update our overall pick and prediction for this one and give you a bit of an idea of this fight. And a lot of people might not be familiar with the fighter to our right-hand side, and Ramiz Brahimaj. He was supposed to make his UFC debut back in June against Takashi Sato. Unfortunately, Brahimaj out of that fight because he had a cornerman that tested positive for COVID-19. It ended up Ramiz Brahimaj contracted COVID-19 over the summer after the fact. Now that delayed his UFC debut a little bit more, and he was supposed to be on Contender Series in 2019 against Miguel Baeza, and a really weird story, and if you want to kind of get into the weeds on that one, he had a great interview with our pal JHK MMA with SCMP, and he described it perfectly. And it's a sad story, really, because Ramiz Brahimaj, he was kind of going through those pre-fight tests, and they found a tumor behind one of his eyes. So, of course, he scratched from that fight, and that was on a card that had Baeza got a win, gets into the UFC. There were a lot of really good fighters on that card, so it would have been a good springboard. But for Ramiz Brahimaj, I mean, practice makes perfect, I guess, and he gets an opportunity this much later. Now, I mean, he's had wild camps. He's been getting ready for a lot of different opponents, but he definitely has a good gym to lean on in Fortis MMA. Saif Saud really putting out some great prospects. And I mean, you don't have to look any further than Max Griffin's second to last fight, where we saw one of Ramiz Brahimaj's teammates in Alex Morono taking on Griffin. I remember when Saif Saud, you get the corner cam, then he goes something like, I think the call was 11-2. Morono goes 1-2 high kick, and it rocks Max Griffin so hard. And we've seen it from Saif Saud. I mean, you had it in the main event last weekend, Anderson Silva against Uriah Hall. Worked out pretty good for Uriah Hall having Saif Saud in his corner. So Ramiz Brahimaj, I mean, 8-2. All 8 of those wins by submission. He's a jiu-jitsu brown belt. He's competed and medaled at Worlds in jiu-jitsu, so you definitely know that he has that strength with him. But also, again, the training partners he have at the gym. I mean, we can go through them on and on and on. But Fortis MMA slowly becoming one of the biggest gyms in the world at turning out great prospects. So for Ramiz Brahimaj, former United States Army vet, and this is a guy that trains out of Fortis MMA. He's cornered Syed Awad in the past. He's been away for about 9 months since that absolute beatdown against Max Griffin. And Ramiz Brahimaj was one of those guys when I was setting up Fight Night picks that I was like, wow, this is a can't-miss prospect that it will end up in the UFC. He's going to make some noise. The trouble for Ramiz, if you go through it, he fought once in 2014, 4 times in 2017, 4 times in 2018, once in 2019. Then he got the call to the UFC in 2020, and now he's been out for 9 months since he fought Max Griffin. So it wasn't great. I mean, this is a former IBJJF world champion from just back in 2019. All 8 of his wins are by submission. Ramiz Brahimaj, a really fun fighter to watch coming into the UFC.
And the UFC did him absolutely no favors by giving him poor Max Griffin in the first fight, because I would say Max Griffin's still at like the upper echelon of what a UFC debut fighter should be fighting. But still, what's Ramiz Brahimaj really good at? Well, he's got great jiu-jitsu, a pretty good wrestling game. All Max Griffin's game's built around is defending takedowns and beating guys up in the feet. So I don't feel like we did get a fair shake of Ramiz Brahimaj's full game in his first time out. Because, and I made this mistake too, I gotta be honest, I thought he got hit by like one elbow in the clinch, got one bad cut on his head, and that was the end of the fight. forgot the extended, I would say, minutes upon minutes of damage that he did take. And again, against a guy like Max Griffin, it really is hard to gauge a guy's UFC debut, because Max Griffin, we know he goes in there and fights like borderline top 15 guys and makes a good account of himself. And he just beat Carlos Condit his last time out, so that tells you how good of a fighter Max Griffin is. This will be an interesting fight, though, because where Brahimaj succeeds is where Palatnikov struggles. Palatnikov got on our case. He thought, hey, I'm better than these boys over here at Fight Night Picks. Got in the comments, said some stuff.
Did an interview with us.
Exactly.
Maybe started the Fight Night Picks interview curse.
Yeah.
That's tough.
But that was the thing about him against Ibika Sanganai. I thought, okay, after the Luis Kosei fight, he defended some takedowns, his cardio looked great. Now, I understand Luis Kosei's cardio looked awful, so it might have made Palatnikov's look a little bit better, but still, when you're a huge underdog and you win in your UFC debut, I can't take too many negatives from it. And I really thought, okay, Ibika Sanganai, we don't really know what he's going to look like down at 170.
After the loss to Joaquin Buckley.
Exactly. Ibika Sanganai ragdolled Palatnikov the second they get onto the mat. And that really is the thing that this fight comes down to. This fight, I guess the two most important things in this fight are takedown defense, but I'd also say cardio. Because with Palatnikov, if he is fresh, I think his movement alone can defend some of the takedowns of Brahimaj. And I do feel like as Ramiz is moving forward, Palatnikov will be able to get some good shots off on him. Now, Palatnikov's interesting because he does have a very extensive striking background, but I don't feel like he has that one-punch knockout threat. Throws in combination quite a bit, likes to end his punching combinations with kicks, and that'll be interesting to see how much he does decide to kick against Brahimaj, because let's say he does start going to the body early and that kick is landing, then Brahimaj's power bar is just going to go down so fast, and in that second and third round, Palatnikov might look great on the feet. The reverse to that is, if Palatnikov throws maybe one lazy leg kick and Brahimaj not even takes him down off it, just catches the kick to put it in the back of Palatnikov's head, then I could see this being, okay, Palatnikov's very hesitant on the feet. He's afraid to let his hands go because he knows once I do let my hands go, that's when my body's open up to get taken down. So this fight really does come down to cardio. I'd say more than any other one on the card.
For both of these guys, I listened to interviews before this fight. For Ramiz Brahimaj, he did one with JHK with Sportskeeda. He talked about kind of the road to recovery, how this was a good matchup. I wouldn't say favorable, but a good matchup. He can implement his style. He can strike a little bit. And for Ramiz, it's not like he got beat up on the feet as bad as the Kasanganai fight, the Max Griffin fight. In the past, he was a guy doing the damage, dropping guys, hurting them, submitting them. For Sasha Palatnikov, throws nice kicks, switches stances, throws a nice lead hook from either stance, and really outlasts a lot of guys. He did an interview with Odds Checker US with James Lynch, and he kind of alluded to the fact, to me it sounded like, okay, well, it's worked for me in other fights. I'm going to do it again in this fight. Maybe feel it out in the first round, take over in the second round, take over in the third round, win a good fight, like he did with Luis Kosei. So I look at this fight, it really is tricky, and when does he kind of wake up? Because in this fight, you're training out a syndicate, you've got Dana Rodriguez, you've got Michael Chiesa, you've got Dustin Stoltzfus, you've got Aaron Jeffrey, you've got all these big names, John Woods, your head coach. What can you prove to me that you've learned from these guys in a fight like this? Because I think both of these guys have really important training partners to get ready for this fight, and I mentioned them both. Chiesa for Palatnikov to get ready for Brahimaj is like Syed Awad to Ramiz Brahimaj. Because if you look at Syed Awad, what does he do? Kind of overextends in some of his punches. He switches stances. He throws those kicks.
Gets tired in 30 seconds?
He does get tired, but he does throw a lot of, blitzing attacks and things you can kind of prepare yourself for when you're taking on a guy like Palatnikov. And the grappling of Chiesa, you can kind of mirror it a little bit with Brahimaj, because for Chiesa, doesn't really strike all that much. He just kind of takes guys down.
Has terrible Darce choke defense, too.
You hate to see it, but again, if you look at it, for Sasha Palatnikov went 1 of 9 in takedowns against Kosei, and 2 of 9 was what Kasanganai, I can't even read, 2 of 6 was what Kasanganai needed to get the fight to the mat, to get the submission. So, Palatnikov, slow starter, and normally is. Ramiz Brahimaj usually likes to get moving quick, so that's what makes this one interesting. You look at the odds for this. Brahimaj open to -110. He's -133 on best fight odds. For Sasha Palatnikov, open up the odds at par, -110. He's a +109 underdog right now. When we go over to Topology, total votes for this one, yikes. 1,058 total votes, 74% with Palatnikov, and they're split half by decision, 46%, and then you have 47% by knockout For the 26% that have Brahimaj, 39% by decision, 47% by submission. Does that surprise you? Because it surprises me.
It doesn't surprise me. I will be completely honest. Now, I see this fight being very, very close, and I can honestly bring up a pretty good argument for why Palatnikov can win this, because Palatnikov does my favorite thing to defend takedowns. He's not stationary. That's the thing about Sasha Palatnikov. He never stops moving his feet, and even if he doesn't have a high level of output in that first round, it's not like he's a stationary fighter. It's not like he's like Conor McGregor in the second Dustin Poirier fight, where it was all boxing stance. Like, he still does move around quite well, and even if he does lose that first round, I feel like he can burn it. If you burn that first round, let Brahimaj go for takedowns, and let himself overextend, maybe you can get some of those reads, and maybe in that second and third round, by throwing a combination, by throwing some of those really nice kicks at range, I do think there is a path to victory for Sasha Palatnikov. But I do think I am going to pick Ramiz Brahimaj in this fight for this reason. Palatnikov just throws kicks too much. It's too much for me. I'm sorry. It's kind of like Zabit. Zabit throws too many, like, 720 head kicks. I know I'm always going to bring Zabit up. But for Palatnikov, it is true. He's not a fighter who can go in there and just beat you with his hands. He does need to incorporate his kicks to really get the most out of his striking game. Even look at Luis Kosei. Like, when Kosei could get into boxing range with Palatnikov, he was landing on him. But once Palatnikov was able to get his feet under him, start to move around a little bit, and incorporate his kicks, then Luis Kosei was so much further away from him, Kosei could never really reach him with his boxing combinations. So at the risk of looking dumb and laying out what I think is an alright game plan for Sasha Palatnikov, I do think Brahimaj, if he can catch one of those kicks, get the takedown in that first round, again, just wear on Palatnikov. You don't need to go for the submission in the first. Make him feel your weight, and then I think the fight will get a lot easier from there. I do like Brahimaj in this one.
Palatnikov doesn't have bad jiu-jitsu. It is good, and he does have a decent stand-up game, but I do think that with Ramiz Brahimaj, I like the wrestling, I like the jiu-jitsu. I don't like that his last win was about 2.5 years ago, and he took such a bad beating in his last fight, but I do like the physical strength that you get out of a guy like Ramiz Brahimaj. So,
and I guess, here, I just have a question to go over to you, because this is something I think about a lot. Do you think for Brahimaj, that was just one fight he had to get out of his system because it had been so long? And I understand that's a bad performance to have on a big stage, but do you think he just kind of needed a performance, get one behind him, kind of just get back into the cage, or having a 10-7 round max scrimmage is just never a good thing no matter what?
Well, I mean, originally he was supposed to take on Miguel Baez on Contender Series, and he was out due to injury. And then he's supposed to take on Takashi Sato in the UFC just a couple days after that. And cornerman tested positive for COVID-19. I guess it was a full year after that. And we previewed that fight here, and I was excited about that one. So the UFC already had an idea of where Ramiz Brahimaj was with these guys in between like 30 and 15 in the welterweight division. And not to say that Palatnikov's a big jump down, but it's not in the same level or ilk as a guy like Sato or a guy like Max Griffin. So I do like Ramiz Brahimaj in this fight. Again, a lot of signs point to Palatnikov with the longevity and the durability, but I do like Ramiz Brahimaj in this fight. We both have him to get the win. Let us know down below in the comments section who you have in this fight. Is it Hong Kong's Palatnikov? Is it Ramiz Brahimaj? We got a great card coming up, headlined by a couple of middleweight contenders. You got Jared Cannonier and Kelvin Gastelum. You're not going to want to miss this. Keep it locked in with Fight Night picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.